so delighted to be back. I know this building well. I know the campus well. I know the community well. We've worked with Aalto for so many years, and it is an inspiring program and a wonderfully inspiring school. In fact, I feel so strongly, right? I came all the way from Palo Alto to Aalto. Okay? And I feel so much a part of the family that I've decided to change my name to Tina with 2 eyes. Okay, so I'm going to start signing everything with Tina with 2 eyes. People start wondering about that. It's sort of an indication of how strongly I feel about our relationship and our partnership. So I have been so fortunate to be at Stanford for the last 16 years, teaching classes on creativity and innovation and entrepreneurship. How many of you think these things are really important? How many people think, fabulous, great? So help me out. What does it mean to be creative? What is creativity?
To be able to sell something.
To sell something. Creativity is to be able to sell something. Who else? Creativity is?
Courage to fail.
The courage to fail. Creativity is the courage to fail. What is creativity?
Generating new ideas.
Generating new ideas. To think out of the box.
Solving a problem.
Solving a problem. If we spent the next half hour going around the room and having everybody define creativity, you know what would happen? We would have that many different definitions. And this is a problem. It's a big problem. I mean, you might think it's just exciting, but it's really a problem. Because when I'm talking to one person, they think it's selling ideas. And to someone else, they think it's solving a problem. And this is a problem in itself. Because if we don't have a shared vocabulary around this process of going from inspiration to implementation, then we really can't communicate well. And I've spent the last year or two thinking about this problem and realized that this is a very unique problem for the world of entrepreneurship education. It's so different from the fields of physics or math or music even, because there they have a very clear vocabulary and a set of relationships like force equals mass times acceleration. Having this clear vocabulary allows you to have a shared language, but then you can apply this, right? This building, this amazing building, is being held up by these forces. And the only reason that people could build it is that they actually understood the math and the physics. We need the same rigor when we're teaching about innovation and entrepreneurship. So I have put a stake in the ground, and I have a set of terms, vocabulary that I put together, and the goal is to come up with something that's super easy to remember and easy to learn, easy to master, and easy to communicate with others. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah.
Great, super. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the beginning at imagination. Imagination is envisioning things that don't exist. Pretty straightforward, right? I can envision, I don't know, right now there are 4 people coming down the aisle, but I can envision another 4 people and another 4 people. I can envision someone coming down with a plate of cookies, right? We do this very well. Every single day we're imaginative. I imagine what I'm going to have for dinner. I open up my closet and I imagine what I'm going to wear today. Imagination is something we're great at as kids and we continue to use through our life. Creativity is applying our ability, our imagination, to address a challenge. So it's essentially applying our ability to envision what doesn't exist to address a problem that's in front of us. Innovation is applying our creativity to come up with a unique solution. So creative ideas are new to me, but innovative ideas are new to the world. This is a very important distinction because a lot of people come up with ideas that they think and they call innovative, but really they're just being creative. It's great to be creative. We do that all day long. We come up with solutions to problems, and it might not be unique to the world, but it might be new to me, and that's a super thing to do. Entrepreneurship is applying the innovations to bring those ideas to the world. And I call this the invention cycle. Now, why is it a cycle? It's a cycle because in order to bring your idea to the world and to be entrepreneurial, you need to inspire other people's imagination. And so now, the trick comes in, the best part. is that now that you have this vocabulary and these relationships, this hierarchy of skills going from imagination to creativity to innovation to entrepreneurship, you can start looking at what has to happen along the way to get you through this process. You can look at the attitudes and the actions that take place at each step. Now, this type of hierarchy of skills is not unique to this field. It happens in so much else of our places where we're learning. Think about learning how to talk. We naturally babble when we're babies. We apply those sounds to make words, apply those words to make sentences, and those sentences to tell stories. That hierarchy, right, each one is more difficult than one before, but we build on our prior skills until we've been able to master the whole thing. So we can now look at what has to happen to master this cycle. And I started out when I was building this model with a long list of things that had to happen at each step along the way. And I decided that I needed to squeeze it down to one representative attitude and one action. Now you might say, that's interesting. Why do you need an attitude? Well, guess what? This process is so dependent upon your mindset. Mindset is an incredibly important part of problem solving and bring the solutions to the world. So we can now go back through the cycle and look what has to happen to get us through this process. So let's go back to imagination. Imagination requires two things: engaging and envisioning. Engaging with the world and then envisioning what might be different. Now there's a bit of a surprise in here because most people think it goes the other way around. They think that you envision where you want to go and then you engage, right? Oh, I'm sit there quietly by myself. I'm going to envision what I want to do with my life and then I make it happen. But true passions don't show up that way. They start with engagement. Before it's your passion, it's likely something you knew nothing about. Let me give you just a simple example. A simple example is I could be a waiter at a restaurant. And I could just go through my day with my blinders on, not really paying attention. Or I could really be observant, okay? And if I'm very observant while I'm a waiter at a restaurant, I'm going to notice what days I get bigger tips than others. I'm going to notice about the demographic of the folks in the restaurant on different days. I'm going to notice what foods are ordered differently. I might talk to one of the customers and find out about their very special need, and that might really enlighten me. Let's say that I'm just interested in paying attention to tips. And I start doing some experiments to see what days I get bigger tips and what things I can do to really affect that. I could then become an expert on customer service. I could then parlay that into an entire career. I could start coaching other restaurants, coaching waiters. I could start a whole firm around this industry. I could open my own restaurant. I could make a movie about it. It could take me in all different directions, all starting with just being a waiter at a restaurant. And the fact is, this is true with everything you do. I want to give you a different story about someone who actually spoke at Stanford on how this works on a larger level than just waiting tables. This is a fellow named Scott Harrison. Some of you might have seen his lecture at Stanford. He spoke in our Entrepreneurial Thought Leader lecture series. And I'm not going to play the video here, but you can certainly watch it online on our eCorner website, which is ecorner.stanford.edu. That was a little commercial there. Okay, so Scott Harrison is a pretty impressive guy. How many of you know of Charity Water? Anyone? A few of you. Great. Well, I want to tell you something. He didn't start out as such an impressive guy. In fact, he was a real loser. And those are his own words, okay? His words. He said it himself on our stage at Stanford. He was, in his 20s, a nightclub promoter. And that meant his job in New York City was to get people drunk. And the drunker that he got them, the better. And he was really good at it. Okay, so he got people really, really drunk. And as a side effect, he became an alcoholic. He became a drug addict. He was addicted to all sorts of things that really, his life was sort of circling the drain. And one day he woke up, he was down in South America, in Punta del Este in Uruguay, and he said, oh my God, my life is a mess. My life is a travesty. I need the opposite of my life. And so what he did is he decided that he wanted to go help the world. Well, how's he going to do that? He doesn't even know about the world. So he wrote letters to all these charities around the world, asking if he could volunteer to help. And you know what happened? They all wrote back and said no. He didn't look like someone who could be very helpful. But one charity, after he kept writing, finally wrote back, and it was a charity called Mercy Ships. And what they do is they send doctors to disadvantaged parts of the world, and the doctors are on the ship for a couple of weeks, and they provide medical service. And they said, you can come along, and you can be the photojournalist and take pictures. So they went to Liberia. He didn't even know what Liberia was. He looked it up on a map, and he ended up going to Liberia and started taking pictures. And within short order, he said, oh my God. I never have seen so many people who are affected by waterborne diseases. Their lives were crushed by these illnesses that came from having unsafe drinking water. And he said, I have to do something about this. So he went back to New York, and using his skills as a promoter, he started promoting this cause. And he started this organization, Charity Water. And the things they do is they build wells and water filtration systems and other things that basically access clean water that is really within reach, but costs some money and takes some effort. And so essentially, this is a reminder that he didn't wake up one day and just out of the blue decide this was a problem he wanted to solve. It came from his experiences. Your experiences, your engagement with the world leads to places where you can find where you can make a difference. Our passions are not innate. They grow from our experiences. So once you're now excited about something and you find a problem that you want to address, you move on to the next stage. And the next stage is the creativity stage. And this requires motivation and experimentation. Now, a little bit of motivation can lead to a little bit of experimentation. But most people don't even start opening their eyes to the fact that they can be people who make a big difference. Or I've seen this also, they start out with a big, huge vision of what they want to accomplish and don't know where to start. They start with something really big, they see their name in lights, they see, they imagine the future, and yet they don't even know how to make the first step. The key is that most people walk around as puzzle builders, following other people's paths for them. They're the folks who look at sort of the map that someone else has made of the world, and they basically follow that map. But what happens if you're a puzzle builder and you're missing a piece of the puzzle? What happens? What happens? It's not so complicated. What happens? Can you complete the puzzle? No. You get frustrated, you can't complete it. These are the people, the puzzle builders, are the ones who say, I'm sorry, that part is out of stock. I'm sorry, the person I need is on vacation. I can't do it. The true innovators, the true entrepreneurs use their motivation, even if it's a little bit of motivation, to see their life not as puzzle builders, but as quilt makers. As those people who take the things they have at their disposal and put them together in ways that are actually more interesting than what someone else has mapped out for them. So the idea is to look at yourself as a quilt maker in every aspect of your life, and then what starts happening is you start experimenting. Think of all the experiments that had to happen in order to put this quilt together. And those experiments lead to really interesting insights. And so the little insight leads to then more motivation and more experimentation and more motivation until finally you've got a lot of motivation and you've got a lot of data that's come from your experiments. Let me show you an example of how this is done. Some of you might be familiar with the design firm IDEO. Yes, in Palo Alto. Great, fabulous. Well, one of the groups at IDEO is the Toy Group. And it's run by Brendan Boyle, and they do zillions of experiments. They do really quick and dirty experiments. They're prototypes, or a term that I've recently started using is pretotype. Has anyone heard the term pretotype before? It was started coined by a friend of mine and a colleague who named Alberto Savoia. And a pretotype comes before a prototype. A prototype tests whether something will work. A pretotype helps you figure out if you're even working on the right thing. An example of a pretotype might be, let's say you have a restaurant and you want to see if you should make a new dish. Let's say an example he would use is Mac Spaghetti. Let's say it's McDonald's and they want to have Mac Spaghetti. Well, they could go and they have their kitchens make up all sorts of batches of spaghetti. Or what they could do is something simple. They could put spaghetti, Mac Spaghetti, on the menu. What happens? They see if people order it, right? All they have to do is say, create like a false door Are people going to order this? If they order it, you go, I'm sorry, it's out of stock. We ran out today. Okay, it doesn't matter. The next day you go make the spaghetti. But you got some great data before you put any effort in. A wonderful another example, Jeff Hawkins, the founder of the Palm Pilot. Any of you were old enough to have used a Palm Pilot? I was addicted to my Palm Pilot. Okay, do you remember what it is? It was your sort of the first personal digital assistant, and it was with your calendar. Okay, well, so when Jeff was designing this, it was super long before we all were carrying around our phones, and he wanted to know if people would do that. So you know what he did? He made a block of wood the size of what he envisioned the Palm Pilot would be, and he carried it around in his pocket for a week. He just wanted to see if it would be something you would want to carry with you. And after a week, he said, you know what? This is something, he would pull it out every time he wanted to make an appointment. And he said, you know what? This would be really useful. So that's when he went ahead with the design. So the prototype comes before the prototype. But then you start prototyping, you do some quick experiments, and you get feedback. One of the problems I see all the time is that people are so afraid to show their early quick prototypes to others that they spend a ton of time, a ton of money, a ton of commitment on a project. And then what happens is they show it to people. And you know what happens? People are not willing to give feedback if it already looks done. And you are so committed to it, you're now devastated if people don't like your ideas. Does this sound familiar? Okay, so you need to get comfortable showing quick and dirty projects to other people. Let me show you an example from IDEO, from the Toy Lab. This was a toy, an iPhone app that they created. We're figuring out if they wanted to do for kids called Monster Maker. Okay, you tell me how much time it took to make this, how much money it costs, how much technology it required, and how effective it is. It's a short video.
Cue music. So this is possible dance moves for Monster Maker. So music starts, and I'm the player, so I come in and I touch the monster, and he gives me a special dance move. I go and touch again, and he does a different one. And it can go for as long as I want, and he has a few signature moves. And when I've had enough and I'm done dancing, I touch the back button, and it pauses, and the music stops. Monster Maker.
Cool.
That's all I can. Come on, that's all I can.
Wow.
Get in there.
Great, okay, so how much money did that cost? Not so much, right? How much technology did it take? Not so much. Okay, what was the other? How much time it took? How much money? How effective was this? Really effective. I was giving a talk and there were some little girls sitting in the back of the room. At the end, they came up and they wanted to buy it. Okay, pretty good. They can test this. What would happen, though, if this had not been successful? If people didn't like it? What would happen? Nothing. They'd say, okay, rip it up, start again, start over again, act out something else. Okay, the fact is doing quick experiments is such a powerful part of the creative process. But once you do get something that works and you start getting some traction, it's now time to be innovative, to really push beyond the obvious solutions, to come up with something that is totally bold and new. This is when you want to be innovative. And this is what I spend most of my time in my classes doing, is teaching people how to push beyond the creative ideas to come up with things that are really innovative. And innovation requires two things. It requires focus and reframing. Now, what is this about? Focus. Focus is about really putting your time and attention in so that you can now start looking at things from different angles. Because this ability to look at things from different angles is the key to innovation. Consider this simple example, 5 plus 5. How many answers are there to this question, this problem? What's that? 55? Okay. What's the answer to this? 5 plus 5 is? 10. Okay, how many answers are there? 1. Good. Okay, thank you. Okay. It was not a trick question, but I'm going to give you a trick question right now. The trick question is there a way to teach this math where there isn't one right answer? Is there a way where you might be able to come up with an infinite number of solutions? Yes, there is. How about like this? How many answers are there to this? What two numbers get up to 10? Add up to 10? Infinite, right? Negative numbers, fractions, decimals. Pretty amazing. We took the same math concept and we turned it around and looked at it from the other direction, and we came up with an infinite number of solutions. In fact, in our work, in our everyday lives, that's really the type of problems we're given, right? Figure out how to grow our market share, figure out how to invent this. Whatever the problem is, we're given the answer, the goal, and we're told, figure out how to get there. So it behooves us to teach people how to answer problems like this as opposed to just the other problems. And so this is what I do in my classes. I give students open-ended problems without one right answer, and what they have to do is they have to come up with at least 100 solutions. At least 100. Because guess what? The first wave of ideas are always incremental. They're always expected. And this is a problem that people face all the time. They have a question that they're trying to answer, and they run with the first solution, or maybe the second one. But you know what? If you really are willing to push, you're going to come up with the second wave, and the third wave, and the fourth wave, and then really interesting solutions. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is to have students come up with the worst solutions to a problem. Let's say I said design a restaurant, and I go, great, you've come up with all the great ideas, now come up with the stupidest ideas. And you know what happens? The stupid ideas are the seeds of something really interesting because they weren't anchored by what was supposed to be good. And so then what I do is they have to pick one and prototype it and test the ideas. So you want to see an example? Okay. So I have been fortunate enough to teach several online classes. A couple of them were called a crash course on creativity. And in these online classes, where I had 25 or 30,000 students around the world, I would give the teams of students a prompt. Sometimes the prompt was one word. It could be a word like pets. And they had to frame a problem around pets, so they had to spend their time brainstorming about the question. Now, this is very, very important. I have them frame-storm before they brainstorm. I have them brainstorm about the question they're asking before they even start the solution. Let me give you an example of why that's important. The question you ask is the frame into which the answer will fall. And so if you don't ask the right question, you're not going to get the right answers. And let me give you an example. Does anybody have a birthday today? This is my favorite example of this. Anyone's birthday today? Come on, somebody. How about this week? Somebody has a birthday this week. I'm not going to trick you. I'm not going to call you up and make you wear a funny hat. Who has a birthday this week? Okay, Will, when is your birthday?
I'll give you the month and day, but not the year.
Okay, go ahead. Eddie, that's fine. January. Okay, we're going to plan an early birthday party for Will. Okay? Okay, should we brainstorm? Let's brainstorm about the best birthday party for Will. Would that be a great idea?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone thinks so. What if I changed one word in the prompt? From let's plan a birthday party to let's plan a birthday celebration. What happened to the set of solutions?
More formal.
What's that?
More formal.
Will you think it's more formal? Is it a bigger or smaller set, a celebration versus a party? Much bigger, right? What if we say, let's find the best way to mark Will's birthday? Oh my God, that's even bigger still. The profound thing here, and I think this is extremely profound, is that the answer was baked into the question. When we were planning a birthday party, the assumption was that it was a party. And so the fact is you need to brainstorm around the question you're asking before you even start trying to answer it. So what I do is I'll give a word like pets, and then I have them frame-storm to come up with a question they want to ask about pets. And then they have to come up with at least 100 solutions, 100 ideas, how to address that problem. And then they have to pick one and prototype it and share it with the class. What kind of problems could you see with pets? How might you frame a problem with pets? Anyone?
Selecting the right pet.
Getting the right pet. What pet should I get? You know, that's the new Dr. Seuss book. What pet should I get? Okay, great.
They need to be taken care of.
How to take care of my pet.
Traveling.
How to travel with my pet.
How to train the pet.
How to train the pet. We could go on and come up with lots of problems with pets. I'm going to play you a video. It's a 1-minute video from one of the teams about, you'll see how they framed the problem around a pet. They came up with 100 solutions. They picked one, prototyped it, and shared it with us. Pretty cool? Okay, how to make this boring pet much more exciting. So you saw the whole process that the team went through in solving this problem. So now that you've got your real innovation, your fortune-telling pet, okay, now you want to bring it to the world. This, and each step gets harder than the one before, right? So now you go to the entrepreneurship stage. And this requires two things. It requires persistence and inspiring others. Now, what is persistence? Persistence is grit. In fact, I understand that there's a Finnish word. What's a Finnish word? Like that I will walk through gray rock. What is it? That word. How do I spell it?
S-I-S-U.
What's that?
S-I-S-U.
I'm going to change that from grit to sisu. Okay, should I do that? That's going to be my Finnish contribution, okay? So my grit, okay, this is the willingness to push through walls to get things out. In fact, entrepreneurship is hard, okay? You've got to learn about strategy and organizations and marketing and finance. You have to build your team. There's so many things that have to happen. And this all requires a lot of grit, but it also requires inspiring other people. Because these things don't get done alone. This is a team effort. And so you need people who are going to join your team, who are going to invest in you, who are going to buy your product, who are going to spread the word. You want to inspire those people. And I spend a lot of time in my classes teaching storytelling techniques. Now, storytelling, it seems like it's for little kids, but it's the furthest from that. Because when you're giving a pitch to an investor, when you're trying to get someone to join your team that you're hiring, you need to tell them a story that is so compelling that they want to put themselves in that story. They want to put themselves in that story. And so here's the framework of storytelling that I use, and I've gotten it from my other colleagues, and it's very effective. I often use it when thinking about a business pitch, although it might sound like it's a children's story. It starts like this: once upon a time, and every day, something happened. That sort of sets the stage of what the world is like now. Until one day. And that's where you come in, until one day, and then you give your solution. And because of that, something happens, and because of that, something happens, and because of that, you can have as many because of that's as you want, until finally, and ever since then. Okay, so this can be your business pitch, it can be a PhD thesis. You basically tell this story. And it can be used in any context. Let me give you an example from my class this last quarter. We were working on a very, very important and very serious problem. The problem of how do people who get out of prison, how do they adjust to the world of freedom afterwards? So the problem was, how do you redesign the experience of going from prison to freedom? And so the students in the class went to San Quentin State Prison, which is a very big prison near us. And they taught classes to the men in a program called The Last Mile, where they're learning about entrepreneurship and how to build their own organizations so that when they get out, they'll be prepared. And the students got to teach in the program. They talked to people all throughout the ecosystem. They talked to guards and probation officers. They talked to former prisoners. They talked to people who were mentors in this program. And they had to basically frame a specific problem they were working on, come up with 100 solutions. It's starting to sound familiar? They had to pick one that they were going to share, and they needed to tell a compelling story. They needed to tell a story that would get people excited about actually implementing their ideas. So I'm going to show you one of the examples just from this last quarter. And I've never showed it to anyone, so you guys are the first ones who will see this. This is one of the teams in the class.
Prison is tough, but at least there are rules. The reentry process is less secure. Recently released inmates lack basic necessities like housing, money, clothing, family, or job opportunities. Without guidance, shelter, or support, many former inmates feel trapped and fall into the same harmful habits that landed them in prison. These individuals need a point of contact, a level of consistency, and a modicum of emotional support to start over. Project Homebase is a host family exchange program created as an effort to incorporate life skills, a support network, and adequate shelter into a cohesive experience for recently released inmates. Upon reentry into society, any inmate with no place to go is assigned to live with a local volunteer family. These families provide housing and help the individual gain life skills like budgeting, cooking, and resume building. More importantly, host families reinforce basic values like loyalty, honesty, and hard work, while providing a safe and caring space for these individuals to reacclimate to society. As the individuals gain employment and stability within their own lives, we hope they will pay the favor forward and teach others what they have learned along the way.
I have to tell you, the projects that the students did were so amazing that out of the 8 teams, already 3 of them projects have been implemented, and they just did them because they were so powerful, and many of them were actually relatively easy to implement. Someone just had to think of it. So now that you've inspired other people, you start building a team around your idea, and this is where the real magic happens. The magic happens because this invention cycle keeps going around and around and around. Most people are not at the center of this invention cycle. They're out on the periphery waiting to be inspired by someone else so that they then become more creative and more innovative and entrepreneurial. I can tell you about this for myself. You know, I've been at Stanford for 16 years, building our program, writing books, sharing what I've done, really stretching the boundaries. But I wasn't the first one to do this. My colleague Tom Byers was there before I was. And then he posted the job. I took a look at it. I thought, there's something interesting here. I joined the team, and I became inspired. This was not a mission. I'm a neurophysiologist, right? This was not a mission that I was born interested in. But as soon as I got involved, I started seeing the places where I can make a contribution. And this is why this is such a powerful set of skills, because with this set of knowledge, skills, and attitudes that allow you to go through this cycle, it prepares anyone to get ideas out of their head and into the world. Thank you very much.